My name is Shaquille, and I'm the Research Fellow at Precision Cornea Centre. In this video, we'll talk about vision. We'll go over some of the basics of visual acuity, we'll talk about the driving requirements, and we'll demonstrate how to measure vision. So how do we measure vision? Vision is a very complex sense. It's multifaceted. We can't measure all the different parameters to our vision, but there are certain parameters that we can measure, such as the visual acuity. This is the sharpness of our vision. We can also measure the visual field. This is how wide we can see. What does it mean to be 20/20 vision? Well, 20/20 is a line on the Snellen chart. And if you can read that full line, then you have 20/20 vision, or your vision is normal. Now, let's break that down a little bit further. So the numerator is the testing distance. This is always done at 20 feet. The denominator is a little bit more tricky. The denominator is the distance at which someone with normal vision can read that same line. For example, if you have 2100 vision, let's say in your right eye, that means that someone with normal vision could be 100 feet away and still read that same line that you read. Let's go over the basics of vision testing. So one, you always want to test 20 feet away from the Snellen chart. 2 is you want to measure one eye at a time. And 3, you want to make sure that if the patient has glasses or contacts that you test with the glasses on. Okay, so that's the corrected vision. So a patient might be seeing 2100, but that might just because they don't have their glasses. Now let's go over some examples. First, let's start off with a case of normal vision. For the purpose of this video, we will skip to the 20/20 line.
D, E, F, P, O, A, E, C.
In this example, all of the letters on the 20/20 line were correct except one. Therefore, the vision is 20/20 minus 1 in the right eye. Let's move on to a case in which the patient presents with vision loss. Have the patient start from the top of the chart and work their way down.
E, F, P, T, C, S.
In this example, the patient read up to the 20/70 line but had 2 mistakes. Therefore, the vision is 20/70 minus 2. What if your patient cannot read the big E, or they can't read any letters on the Snellen visual chart? Then what do? Well, the first thing you would do is test by counting fingers. If the patient is unable to count fingers, then you move on to hand motion. If the patient is unable to perceive your hand motion, then you move on to light perception. And if the patient's vision is so bad that they can't perceive light, then you would say that this patient has no light perception. It's also important that you measure the distance at which you're testing. Now let's show you how to test using counting fingers, hand motion, and light perception. Ask the patient how many fingers you are holding. The distance here is roughly 2.5 feet. If the patient correctly states the number of fingers, then you would say that the patient is able to count fingers at 2.5 feet. If the patient is incorrect, then move on to hand motion. Ask your patient which direction your hand is moving. For example, up and down or side to side. If the patient is not able to see hand motion, move on to light perception. Here, simply ask the patient if they perceive the light. We use tissue so we could completely occlude the non-tested eye. You could also ask which direction the light appears. There are certain situations in which measuring a patient's vision might be a little bit more difficult. For example, if it's an inpatient in the hospital. So what do you do then? Well, you can actually just have the Snellen visual acuity chart on your phone. You can do this by downloading an app or just searching it up, and then you can have the patient read the Snellen chart about an arm's length away. And so you'll get a measure of vision that way. In regards to driving requirements, in Ontario, you have to be able to see 20/50 with both eyes open. That means that if you have one eye which is seeing poorly, for example 2200, and your other eye is 20/20, just based off that first criteria, you would still be eligible. But then you also need to meet the visual field requirement. So that's 120 degrees horizontally and 30 degrees vertically.